All you need is one person in your life who says, "You got this, I believe in you," and you will find courage and energy to do things that you would not have had before. But more importantly, that person needs to also say, "And if everything goes wrong, I will be there for you, and I will be there with you, and I will be in the mud with you," and has the ability to say, "Something's wrong, I'm worried about you." And I think burnout happens when you're attempting to do all of the things you see other people do and not realize that they have deep, meaningful relationships that you can't see. And you think, falsely, that you have to do it alone. And that's when burnout happens, because you don't, as an individual, have the energy. But in community and in relationship and in friendship, it's remarkable, including knowing when to just take a little break to recharge.
Hi, everybody. I'm John Self. Welcome to Lunch and Learn. It is the Tuesday, June the 25th. Gosh, it's hot as hell, but the summer is tracking along pretty fast. July 4th is around the corner next week, and we will have a holiday schedule for those days. So if any of our normal broadcasts occur on July 4th, trust me, I'll probably be smoking brisket and making margaritas for friends. We live on a golf course. I do not play golf, and used to, but haven't in recent years. But they have on the first fairway, which we live adjacent to, they have this magnificent fireworks show. So we always get a great view, and I will take some photos or some videos and play those back for you. Today, we have an important, I think, program for you. It's something that I think it's near and dear to a lot of people's heart, because people aren't always honest. And a lot of people struggle with self-esteem and the sense of they're not worthy of their success, or they shouldn't be successful for any number of reasons. We grow up with having people model expectations or model roles for us, and sometimes we pick up on the negative things about those roles. So we're going to talk about it today. And the other thing I'm going to do is do something I rarely do, and that's share a little bit of my story and my struggle with how I've tried to work and deal with this whole issue of, am I worthy of success? Believe me, I've had that imposter show up several times and sabotage that success. So today we're going to start off with, why is this so important today? Why is this so important now? Because we're in a big mess. The second thing is that when you struggle with self-worth, when you struggle with your self-esteem, it's because the devil is in your head. You're listening to the wrong voice. Third, we're going to talk about what you can do to win the battle. And 4, takeaway, please do not ignore this threat. And you don't want to ignore this threat because of the tremendous challenge facing job seekers today. Let me tell you a little bit about myself before. This is not my story, but I'll tell you about that in a few minutes. I'm a former crime writer and investigative journalist for the Houston Post, and then before that, the Lubbock Avalanche Journal. I was a news editor, and I started my career in Tyler, Texas, where I'm currently located, as a police reporter, general assignments reporter, and rewrite reporter. And so that's how I got my start. I love the news business. But as I progressed in Houston, and there was a lot of violence, and you can only take so much of that. I think that's one of the reasons a lot of times you hear about, dysfunction with police families, is that the police officers see so much that's so different from their own lives, that's so contradictory to their own values, and yet they have to deal with it, process it, and move on. I think my last about a year and 4 or 5 months, I was on scene of 25 or 30 homicides, and that's a lot of mayhem to look at. So I always talked about my time on Houston and referred to it as life on the mean streets. I became a PR director at Herman Hospital after I decided I had all that fun at the newspaper business I wanted to have. But the newspaper business was security for me. I was good at it. I rarely missed anything, and the city desk depended on me and knew that when I was on the scene, I'd get the information to them. And so that built a lot of confidence. And then I went to Herman Hospital as public relations director, and Bill Smith saw something in me. I'm not sure what, and he gave me an opportunity to be the first director of Lifelight. And throughout his life, even though sometimes I didn't always deserve it, he was patient with me. He spanked me a couple of times verbally when I would make mistakes. But at the end of the day, he always saw something in me and that kept me going, that kind of provided me with that inner confidence that, in fact, I could do anything. I helped after building Lifelight, getting it off to a good berth and start. I was hired by the helicopter company, and now I was doing something that I was really passionate about, that I'd been successful with at Herman, and I knew it would work. And I had great support from a boss by the name of Phil Mayhew, who was the president of Aviation Medical and Western Helicopters, and a terrific guy to work for, and was always providing me encouragement, always providing me support. And it wasn't me out there, it was Lifelight, it was the helicopter company. And that's a theme that I'll bring up with you in just a few minutes. I became the executive director, built the second largest rural community hospital program for Herman. Again, representing Herman, a name that I believed in, a brand that I had confidence in. We were doing good work for community, something I was very proud of. It wasn't me, it was Herman. It was the brand. It was the work we were doing. I became the executive director for the largest private EMS network in Texas in the early 90s. We were private provider of the year when I was the CEO, and we went through a major transformation. I realized that God did not call me on this earth to be a CEO of a large EMS enterprise, and so I took over international recruiting and found my niche. I've worked in two search firms that I founded, John March Partners and then John G. Self, which is now johngself.com. So that's my professional story. I've gone through 4 career changes in life, and that's one of the things in coaching I enjoy the most, when people come to me and say, help me find my way. I'm not happy doing what I'm doing. Help me find a different way to go. And that's something I've done, and I'm happy to share that. So, first section, what a mistake, what a mess. So what are we talking about? Well, most executives and managers see career management solely as a job search activity, not an ongoing activity critical for sustainable success. This is the mistake, and people make this mistake every day. So if you're struggling with your job search, understand that a lot of people don't manage their career for the long term. They manage it transactionally from job to job to job. And the only time they really focus on their brand or anything else about their image is when they're thinking about looking for a job. And that is a big, big mistake that going forward with more automation and more AI involved in recruiting, you cannot afford to make. Please don't make that mistake. But that's really something that happens to a lot of people, and it creates a whole series of fallouts. I guarantee you, for many, many people, it has catastrophic personal and financial consequences. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of people today who are competent, who had good track records, who are on the sidelines because they can't find a job. Some of them are from technology, some of them are from healthcare, some of them are from retail and manufacturing and communications and publishing. We are going through a tremendous reset in the management executive jobs market. Some of it was really spurred forward and accelerated by the pandemic. And then when the pandemic was over, with new changing work habits and hybrid relationships, CEOs realized, hey, we don't need all these executives. We don't need all these managers. And so companies have been able to do more with less. And that's one of the reasons we are forecasting that this tight management and executive job market is not going to improve anytime soon. So you have to be very, very careful. It's a mess. It really is. In my entire 27 years in executive search, I have never seen the management and executive job market to be this dysfunctional. I mean, the number of out-of-work managers, it's not really readily available. I've spent 2 weeks trying to find data, and it may be right in front of me and I've missed it. So if you have anything, send it to me. But the number, just based on anecdotal evidence, is shockingly high. It's multiple thousands of workers. Some people have said 25 to 30,000 that are looking for jobs that can't find jobs. And then plus you have more layoffs, strategic layoffs that are occurring. And so you're putting more people into that funnel and nothing to provide for them at the bottom end of the process. If you are relying on online applications, and many people are because they haven't managed their career effectively, they have not managed built their network and stayed in touch with their network. The best odds you're going to get online on average across the country, 150 to 1. That means there's 150 chances you ain't going to get picked. Okay. And that's pretty desperate. So please understand that first mistake that I talked about can have catastrophic problems. Now, in the past, not so much because people would be out of work maybe 3-6 months. That was a long time to be out of work back then. It is now 8 to 14 months. And most severance packages are at best 90 to 180 days. So you've got a real gap there, and you can't afford to go into the job market so unprepared, especially this job market. I think applying for dozens to hundreds of jobs, that's something you hear about that and people are going, oh, that can't be true. It absolutely is. It is not uncommon to hear about people apply for 80, 100, 120, 130, even 400 or 500 and only get 2 or 3 or 4 callbacks. 2 or 3 or 4. That's so much rejection. How can anyone who's desperate to find a job, who's so used to being successful, who is so secure with their success, how can they deal with that much rejection? And again, something I said in passing just a minute ago, but I want to come back and reinforce that. The majority of applicants now are applying online because A, that's the way companies want you to, but 2, because they have poor or non-existent personal networks. And that's critical because the best jobs are not published. They're not listed. They are filled based on a trusted referral. So if you do not have a relevant network that is tied in with your career plan, where you want to be, next job, that sort of thing, you're going to struggle. And this is not going to get any better. It's only going to get worse. And it's absolutely, you just can't ignore this anymore. Please don't do that, because you're going to be somebody who is then forced into premature retirement or out of the industry that you chose for your life's work. So don't do that. Corporate talent acquisition recruiters are now also using LinkedIn's high-speed scanners to build larger candidate panels. In the old days, and when you have gray hair, you go, in the old days, everybody goes, oh God. In the old days, you might have in an executive search for a CEO, you might have 10 or 12 active candidates, people that knew about the job and they're employed, but that was a step up, so they've contacted you. And then you had people that you would go talk to who probably didn't know about the job and ask if they knew of anybody that might be interested. And what we were really asking, are you interested? So if you got one of those calls, it's because they hoped or thought you might be somebody who's qualified and interested. And so sometimes you'd have 6 or 8 passive candidates. When you don't know about a job and you're solicited by a recruiter or by direct email, that means you're a passive candidate. And if you're actively applying for the job, you're an active candidate. Well, in the old days, the number of active candidates far outnumbered the passive candidates because it was harder to find those people. Now with high-speed scanners, LinkedIn can go through thousands and thousands of potential people based on their algorithm and their profile information, can go through thousands of application or profiles in minutes, not weeks or months, but minutes. And so it's so important for you to manage your brand today. And you have to manage your brand not primarily, but principally on LinkedIn. I mean, there are other areas in your association, in your local networking, in your business dealings that you'll build a network. But LinkedIn is not going to build you tight relationships, but it is going to connect you with those scanners that are looking for people who are looking for potential applicants that qualify. And so this too is dramatically changing the talent acquisition mix, the chemistry of the whole process, which makes it with an excess number of executives and managers looking for jobs, It just makes the problem so much worse. It makes the time it's going to take for you to succeed so much longer. So you have to approach this with a knowledge of how what changes have occurred, and you have to have a plan on how you're going to compete effectively against thousands of other people. This is a zero-sum game. You don't get picked, somebody else gets picked. You get picked, somebody else doesn't get picked. So you have to win the fight to be successful in today's job market. And you can say, well, I'm just not comfortable with that. Get comfortable. It is not going to change because you're uncomfortable. I think in a post-pandemic world, corporations, as I said earlier, realized they could do more with less. And the job imbalance, I think, is going to continue for the foreseeable future, to sum up what we've been saying. And AI, oh my God, we haven't mentioned AI. Well, it's going to create what I call a trickle-up impact. If you need fewer clerks and administrative support personnel and payroll and accounting and those types of jobs, supply chain, they're not needing as many people because you can automate more of those jobs. That's going to trigger the need for fewer supervisors. And then fewer supervisors is going to trigger the need for fewer managers. And eventually that's going to work its way up to fewer executives. And if you multiply that across the board, you're going to realize that this problem with the imbalance of more people looking for work in the management and executive area than you have jobs, this is not going to get any better. And with the possibility that AI may dislocate 5 to 10 million jobs over the next 6 years, that is going to have a major impact on those people, but also on the number of executives and managers that will be needed. So you absolutely, if you're not taking all of this seriously in terms of being aggressive about managing your brand, then you're in trouble. And it's a mess, and you're going to have to get out of it. And if you're also struggling with your self-worth, well, that can make it almost unbearable. So let's talk about getting the devil out of your head. This is something that that a lot of people really struggle with. I mean, the research shows that that many people listen to the worst version of what their brain is telling them. And, a lot of people go to sleep at night not realizing the brain doesn't really sleep. The brain's having conversations with itself. And so, all the negative thoughts of all the self-abuse that you've heaped on yourself during the day, the brain goes into overdrive and you wake up the next morning feeling tired, fatigued, you don't know what's going on. And you think maybe you need to go see your doctor, or maybe something's happening to you. A lot of this is what's in your head. A lot of this is your brain not giving you the credit you deserve. A lot of it is you not having the self-confidence that when you go to bed at night, that you're a good person, that you're a talented person, and that you can be successful, and that you will be successful because you're going to out-hustle everybody else. Now, it's a personal barrier, and it is a common barrier, limiting personal and professional success. People don't like to talk about this because somehow it's just maybe peeking over the horizon at mental depression. Well, I'm going to tell you something. If you're one of the thousands of people who've been in the job market for 8 to 12 or 14 or 15 months, I have had in the last year 2 or 3 executives, one of whom I've known for a long time, break down in tears because they were so frustrated because they had always been successful, and now they can't get traction, and they don't understand that the market's changed. They weren't prepared for this shift, and it happened almost without warning. Now it's been a slow change. It's been coming for a while, but people weren't paying attention. If you're employed, the tendency is, hey, I'm going to be okay forever. I am bulletproof. Well, no, you're not. And let me tell you something, all those jobs that you feel are secure may not be so secure. So you need to pay attention to what's happening with AI and what's happening in the job market. You can't allow yourself to be marginalized because it will affect your self-worth. Now, it's not uncommon for people who've been in long job searches to really get loaded up with self-doubt. But you need to understand something. You are not alone. Worldwide, it's estimated that as many as 85% of the population suffers from this low self-esteem or this low self-worth. Now, those are two different terms, but that we tend to use them together, and it's hard to get people to separate them. But the psychologist will be happy to correct me, I'm sure. I'm going to do something that I very rarely do because I want you to understand that a lot of people who've had good careers, and I've been very blessed with a great career, have struggled with self-doubt. And so I'm going to share my story with you briefly today to kind of give you some ideas of how it can happen. In growing up, my dad was from a baking family in Terrell, Texas, and he went off to war. And after the war was over, he and my mom settled in Houston, and he became the manager of the Rice Food Market Bakery in the Rice Village in Houston. And they were kind of lower middle class people, hardworking. My father, everybody that came back from the military, in that class were kind of together. And there was a sense of we're in this together. Now, my dad and mom were hard workers, but when they bought the bakery in Tyler, it was a big challenge to make it successful. And I was a latchkey kid. And my entertainment was books and TV. That's how I spent my Friday nights, kind of isolated. And they were never around, not because they didn't love me, but because they were working hard to provide a better life. And in fact, they did provide a better life. And although I miss some of the things that some kids had, I'm still proud of who I am, and I'm proud of my parents. About the time I was ending the third grade, my dad, we had done well enough that we moved from a very, very challenging neighborhood on the north side, east side of town, which is now predominantly Hispanic. But at the time, it was a good neighborhood with good blue collar people, and we lived in a rental house. And we finally were able to buy a house, and we moved to the other part of town. And so I went from a blue collar sort of, hey, we're all kind of good kids, elementary school, into a very socially oriented area. And it was a tough adjustment. I'd always been well liked. I'd always been well received. I'd always had plenty of friends. And now I was kind of ostracized. And I think that really worked on my sense of who I was. Because my father, from time to time needed help, I didn't have all the social interactions that a lot of other people did. I worked at the bakery. I helped clean the place. I washed pots and pans. I've washed more pots and pans in my life, I think, than some housewives will. But it was something that we did for the family. And it was something that, to help, earn money for college. When in high school, I went to a very affluent South Tyler high school that was called Cadillac High. And it was very cliquish. I really struggled with, who I was and what I was worth. And I didn't feel quite up to all the other kids around me. I didn't have the nice cars. I didn't always have the nice clothes. And I struggled with who I was and what my self-worth was. And it wasn't an overwhelming thing. It didn't pitch me into depression, but it was always there, and it was always holding me back. I excelled in debate, and then I struggled with a lot of schools. Found out later in life that I was ADHD, and not something educators didn't even know about then. I really began to find myself in college. Journalism was my passion. Even when I was in school, I continued coming back to Tyler so I could get experience working on the weekends. I became the editor of my college newspaper, and this all helped me build confidence for the future. After school, couldn't find a job in Dallas. No big surprise because I didn't have a lot of experience. There were 2 newspapers in Dallas at the time, and that was my goal. And couldn't get in with the AP or UPI, and so I took a job as an editor at the Lubbock Avalanche Journal in Lubbock, Texas. And it's not a place that I really wanted to be, and I felt kind of isolated and destitute. I was married at the time. And we had a life, but I was always unhappy and ready to move. And after 1 year, 3 months, 4 days, and 12 hours, I got a job in Houston, and Lubbock was in the rearview mirror. And then at the Post, I excelled. I was an editor, and then they needed help on the police beat. I had experience, and they had confidence in me. And that made me feel really good. I was in my element. I wasn't around a lot of other people. I survived on my own work. And my gratification was my byline that had frequently appeared on the front page of the Post. And then Bill Smith, the CEO of Herman, came into my life, and he saw something in me, and he gave me a chance. And I became the first Herman. Something that, today, if you go look at that magnificent program, you might find some of my contributions on the smallest part of a pinhead, because that was, 1976, when we had a walkie-talkie and a two-way radio and a telephone. That was how we dispatched the helicopter. But I was successful because I was selling Herman. I was selling this incredible program for the community benefit. When I became the national marketing manager for the aircraft company, this was not about John. This was about an idea I was selling. So it was worthy, and I was selling the idea. On building the second largest rural community hospital network. It was something that I really, really cared about. And I thought we were doing good work. Just like in Lifeline, I was dealing with some of the biggest names in healthcare in the country and didn't have any problems with that. But in building the hospitals issue, I didn't care for the rejection you got periodically, so I always tried to build relationships to avoid the rejection. But it's part of the business, and so I went on with it. But this was not about John. This was about Herman. This was about affiliated hospitals. And then I went out on my own, and I found something happened. Everything changed for me, because I wasn't out there selling an idea. I wasn't out there selling a program that I was passionate about. I was out there now as the founder of a search firm, selling my ability, selling my reputation. This was not Herman. This was John Self. And I felt so insecure and so second guessing myself. I'm not worthy to be here. And I think that this is something I just want to wrap up on. That it's very common that for people who've been very successful, as long as they're behind an idea, as long as they're behind a great product or a great company, it's easier for them to do the work. I struggled building my firms. I was successful, but I struggled because I looked at some of the bigger people who showed up and they had all their fancy brochures. And here I was with sort of stuff that I was able to put together on my Apple computer and a nice printer. And I was constantly, I was losing deals left, right, and center, something had never happened to me before, because I didn't have the reputation of a Whit Kiefer or a Korn Ferry or Heidrick and Struggles or Russell Reynolds. And I constantly found myself dealing with people who had been in the search industry, spent their entire careers in the search industry. And I didn't take the time to really focus on how to differentiate myself in the marketplace. And it took a long time for me to get there. And I wasted a lot of career opportunity because I didn't want to sit down and have that discussion with myself. Because the fact of the matter is I have brought to the table experiences that those other full-time recruiters or people who had spent most of their career in recruiting, they were just transactional. All they were interested in is finding somebody who fit the bill, the client was happy with, so they could move on to the next deal and then come back and do work for that client again in the future. And it took me a long time to find my voice. And, there are days I still struggle with it now as a coach. But the truth is that, I finally came to grips with this by realizing that I was different. I wasn't like everybody else, and that wasn't a weakness. And I had let it become a weakness for me. And what I found was that I had strengths to bring to the table that clients would value if they only knew my story. And that's when I became very, very adamant and interested in how do you communicate your story without sounding like a jerk. So let's talk about in step 3, the steps you can take to do a better job in this situation where the job market's terrible. You're getting rejected all the time, and you're beginning to worry about am I even any good? Can I even compete anymore? Well, I think self-worth is the definition that the colleagues at University of North Carolina at Wilmington provided. It's the internal sense of being good enough and worthy of love and belonging from others. That's the feedback you get from other people. Self-worth is often confused with self-esteem, which relies on external factors. And I was one of those people who was really conflicted because I had the self-worth issues and self-esteem issues. I wasn't good enough. Maybe I wasn't supposed to be successful. Maybe I was supposed to be like my father, who did incredible work. But we serve the public in the bakery business. And I'm going to stop and really kind of highlight this. We did things that were really great for other people's holidays, for their birthdays, for their weddings, for their anniversaries. I delivered wedding cakes all the time in East Texas after I was able to drive. That's one of my strengths. I know how to deliver a wedding cake without screwing it up. But my father's philosophy and the way he brought us up was, listen, we are not their friends. We are here to serve them. And that gives you, that's okay. That's a reasonable approach to take. But, when you take that and that becomes the driving force of who you are, that can be a very bad thing. Yes, you may be in the service industry, but service is a great honor. And I was always extraordinarily proud of my father's work. And and to this day, the older people in this community that knew the bakery when he owned it will say, "Oh my God, he made all of my birthday cakes," or "He made my parents' anniversary cake. He made my wedding cake. He made my sister's wedding cake." And that was great to be a part of that. But we were not there to be their friends. We were not there to be their equals. We were there to serve. And I think I took that sort of approach and let it get out of hand. So if you're struggling today, think about self-reflection. What words would you use to describe yourself today? Think about that. Write them down, please. What value do you place on yourself or aspects of your life? Be honest with yourself, but give yourself a break today. Were your descriptions generally positive, balanced, or were you negative? Well, the first time I did this, I was very negative about myself. I was shocked when I did this the first time because I felt so inadequate against some of my competitors. Where did your messages around your self-worth come from? Well, I will tell you that I was extraordinarily lucky in key points in my life. Bill Smith at Herman Hospital gave me a chance. He passed on, and I was able to be with him right before he died. But he made a huge change in my life. He changed my life. And Phil Mayu, the aircraft manager, who told me, "Look, you're important. We want you to fly first class because you're going to be traveling a lot. I want to take good care of you because you are money in the bank." And I delivered because I was excited and because I knew he had confidence in me and because it wasn't John Self. It was the aircraft. It was Life Flight. It was the program. I wasn't selling me. I was selling an idea. And I think these are things that you need to think about on this self-reflection aspect of what you can do to improve your situation. Now, I also want to really stress that the value of journaling. Changing your mindset it requires a concentrated effort on a daily basis. You need to stop the self-abuse. I sometimes get so frustrated at myself, I stop and I think, if I was saying that to an employee, I would be fired. I would be banished from the industry. Okay? So the question is, what do you tell yourself silently when disappointment comes? Or what do you say out loud when you make a mistake? Be mindful of this. Stop abusing yourself. If you were doing that to an employee, you would be fired. Don't do it to yourself. Also, keep a journal of your thoughts, your insights, and reflections, and encourage yourself. It's important. It's important to remind yourself of what your qualities are and how you are unique and how you can compete. And I want you to focus on gratitude. I want you to start each day in your journal thinking of 2 or 3 things that you're grateful for. A lot of times, I'm grateful for my wife. She drives me crazy, and I know that I'm lucky to still be alive because I've made her so frustrated. But, she's now in California for a couple of weeks, and I found myself totally out of sync. We've been together 29 years, and I'm out of sync because that part of my life that's a constant, that's not the biggest cheerleader for me. I wish she was a bigger cheerleader, but she's not. That's not who she is. but she's there and she's supportive and she tries to take care of my health. I'm a post-cardiac open heart patient, and she's constantly fussing at me for, don't have another martini, don't do this, that's bad food for you, all the stuff that drives you crazy. But the truth is, it's based on love and support. And you have to remind yourself of that and not focus on the negative issues. Somebody once said that being successful in a marriage was combat compatibility. And I think that's probably true. But also because we always think we focus on the negatives, and that's a slide step away from there may be something better out there for us. And the truth is, be honest with yourself, be true to your commitments and your vows, and do the right thing by yourself. Don't yell at yourself and beat yourself up. And you need to be very intentional about that all day long. And at the end of the day, not gratitude, write down, what did you do that was a success today? What did you fail to do that you wanted to get done? And then you can't just write this stuff down and never look at it. I used to do that all the time and wondered what journaling was all about. And then I started going back and reading what I wrote. And I have found that sometimes the writing is not, I don't have that cheerleader in my life like I had with Bill Smith or Bill Young, another great guy to work for because he was so encouraging and so supportive. But I found that I can supplement that by my journaling and trying the positive thoughts that I try to put in the journal in the mornings from gratitude and the evenings from, I didn't get this done, but I can do better and I will do better. Now, I think it's important that as you go through this, and because there's so many people struggling with job searches right now, you get isolated. Because even in the old days, they had these outplacement offices where you went, and there was all these people, and then you had a cube, and they had somebody answering the phone, and you had a secretary who was doing your resume. That was before you could manage your career at your desk. It's more efficient for the employer not to pay a outplacement service 15 or 20 or 30% of your former salary to help you find another job. But now what happened is a lot of people have a computer. They're very computer proficient. They are learning how to manage data more effectively, but they don't manage their brand. They don't realize the importance to do this. And so you can be very isolated when you're in a job search. You listen, it only takes one person to champion you, your talents and your abilities. It only takes one person to believe in you. That for you to catch fire. Remember what John Wesley said, when a man catches fire with enthusiasm, people will come from all over to watch him burn. And sometimes I lack the enthusiasm for myself, even though I was a really good recruiter. And my record was probably better than a lot of the other big name firms. I didn't have any mishires in the CEO category, and my average tenure for executives was more than 8 years. In healthcare, where I did a lot of my work, it was about 3 years tenure. So I was good at what I did, but I never gave myself the credit. It's time for you to give yourself the credit. It's time to talk to yourself, not in a degrading way, but in a positive way. It's time to get connected with your story and find those parts of your life that were uplifting and make them part of your life today. Now, here's your takeaways. You're not alone. Please be honest with yourself. Do not ignore this issue. It will absolutely prolong your job search. And besides, it'll help you deal with some of the crushing rejections that you get. When you go through all these interviews, you think you're going to get a job offer, and then you don't hear a damn thing. It's unbelievably difficult for people. The last thing I want to suggest for you is to find a community, because it only takes that one person to help you and lift you up. And what we're trying to do with your career community, and we're struggling to do it, is to get people who are looking for a job, get people who need and want to work in a community that can be trusted. And we're very, very small right now. We're going to keep working hard to build it up. But if you need that, schedule a free call with me, and to find out if what we try to do will be something that you could participate in, that you feel like you could help contribute and help us grow. That would be something we would welcome from you, and it would give you an opportunity for more interaction instead of just looking at the computer all day long. Now, I hope tomorrow that you'll join us at 4 p.m. for office hours. We're planning another group coaching session, and so we hope you'll join us for that. We really, it's something I enjoy doing, and we usually have a lot of people, because it's in the afternoon, a lot of people watch it on replay on YouTube. Now, your community, and starting in September, a lot of this stuff that you're getting now online live will be a members only, or some of them will be members only. And so we'll probably phase them in first, doing office hours as a members only, and then adding lunch and learn later. Career Live on Thursday mornings will probably be a general open to the public one. But that's you're really going to focus on our members. And if you become a member, you get access to half price consulting or half price coaching. You get 3 check-in phone calls every month, so we can connect. If you need special help, you can always schedule a special Zoom we call it a lift me up Zoom meeting. And because there are people who care about you. I've been there. I had been so disconsolate about not being able to find a job, having a brand new baby and getting dumped by a company because I worked for the wrong guy who was not politically popular with the CEO anymore, and they dumped us without any notice. I think I got my last check, but I had young dad. We just bought a house, so we didn't have a lot of cash. We'd already invested in the house. And it was not a time where you could quickly flip a house and get your money back out. And so it was a really desperate time. And I found a place. It didn't last very long because Bill Smith heard that I was out working for a different company, and he brought me back because he had confidence in me. And there are people out there that'll have confidence in you. And if you need to be reminded, get to know us, and we'll be happy to remind you. We'll be happy to do everything we can to lift you up and to provide you the insight and information that you need to accelerate your job search. I want to thank you for taking time today, and I thank you for your patience and letting me share my story with you, because it's something that I think a lot of people are like me. You've had success, but you've struggled sometimes deciding whether you were worthy of that success or whether you were good enough to compete. And sometimes having somebody remind you, yes, you are good enough. Yes, you can be valuable. Yes, you do have a contribution to make in a meaningful way. People need to hear that, and that's what Your Career community is being created to help support. Thank you for your time today. I really appreciate the opportunity to spend it with you. And if you have any questions, go to my website, johngself.com. Go to the bottom, punch the button, talk to John, Remarkable Marketing, and it'll schedule a telephone call or a Zoom call. And we're happy to share any information and try to give you some guidance in that 30 minutes. So thank you, everyone, very, very much. Have a good afternoon. Cheers.